So Mortal Kombat 2 is the sequel to the 2021 Mortal Kombat reboot. And I didn't really like the reboot. I thought it was like a little bit too serious, and I thought it kind of like wasted a lot of its time kind of building up the tournament. And with the sequel, I think even though this is from the same director, I think the director understood the assignment this time. I think he realized that a key aspect of Mortal Kombat is that it's a goofy ass game. Okay, sure. I mean, like, there's a loose story of warlords from other realms and monsters that rise from the pits of hell, but it all served just as as a serviceable lattice for the meat of these fighting games, which was just to watch your opponent or yourself explode into giant chunks. I didn't plunk down like fistfuls of quarters at the Mortal Kombat 2 arcade cabinet at my local Shakey's because I cared that much about whether or not the fighters that I played as would win the battle. I just wanted to see all the violence and the gore and all the weird finishing moves like animalities and babalities and friendship. So it was a very ridiculous, dumb game that had just a loose enough story to weave it together. And this movie, I think, brought back a lot of that intoxicating thrill, which is, and I think it's very fitting for this film because it feels like it's tonally faithful. I mean, on a tactile level, the movie is faithful to the games. Like, there are a lot of familiar characters and costumes and locations and special moves, but more than anything, I think tonally, for matching like the goofiness and the goriness of the games, that's what mattered most. And I think the film finds a good balance between a lot of the gore effects from the 2021 film and just the dumb, the confident dumbness of the 1990s film, which I adored. I admired the spirit of that film, and this kind of feels like a good combination of both the dumb fun and the ridiculous violence, which is kind of Mortal Kombat. So I'm sure there's a big question for a lot of people, which is like, do I need to rewatch that film from a few years ago, the reboot? And you kind of don't, mostly because like they reveal a lot of the story in flashbacks. But you really don't need to know too much about the characters here, especially since they establish a bunch of new characters. In particular, they establish Johnny Cage, played by Carl Urban, which is just like a perfect choice. Like, Carl Urban has this like perfect just this weary gruffness to him that I think works well for Johnny Cage, who's staged in this film as an action hero who is kind of like past his prime. Like, he starred in like a bunch of big Hollywood movies and he was kind of like a big action star, and now he's just kind of now he's just like begging for money at conventions. It's not working out for him. So when Raiden shows up and says like, look, I want you to fight in this tournament to save Earthrealm. If we lose this battle, Earth is going to lose to this evil warlord of Shao Kahn. And of course, after hearing all this, Johnny Cage, with not really having any special powers, just says, no, F that. I can't do this. Why did you all choose me for this fight? This sounds pretty ridiculous. And it's that kind of knowing nature that I think really makes this film so much fun, is because it does have a story with stakes. There is a reason why the combatants are fighting for their realms, not just for Earthrealm, but also for the competing realm here, because you get to know the character of Kitana. So with Kitana, they set her up as somebody whose father was murdered by Shao Kahn, and now she's serving this realm and fighting against the Earth realm. So she's very conflicted about wanting to fight them. So there's a pretty good story there, but I think having that along with like Johnny Cage kind of reacting to all this with a kind of like cynical attitude and pop culture references, I think has like a good balance of like the ridiculousness and kind of like the tongue-in-cheek aspect of establishing all the fantasy for this type of setting. That goes a long way, because when you get to like the first fight, you're invested enough in the characters on both sides where you're kind of wondering, oh man, I wonder who's going to win here. Like, I'm not sure if I really want to root for the Earthrealm here. I kind of got to know a bit of these characters on the other side, and I kind of understand their plight. So it kind of makes the battles a little bit more interesting. Now, of course, I'm sure a lot of fans are wondering, is there a lot more fatalities? Because if you watch the reboot, there weren't as many fatalities in that movie. And yes, there are a lot of fatalities in this film. But what I found most fascinating is that the fights that don't have fatalities, I actually found much more compelling. And I think that's just because of the way that the fights are staged. Like, they're not just set up in like an arena of dirt and there's people cheering all around them. They're actually in a variety of different settings. They're in like villages of wood and villages of straw. They're in like they're on bridges and pits of acid. They're in the depths of hell. And they're using the environment all around them. I think that's what I loved so much about the fights in this movie, which there are a lot. And if you are going to have that many fights, there needs to be some variety to it. Instead of just being like, a series of kicks and punches before the inevitable killing blow of the fatality, where someone gets their head smashed in, or gets a limb chopped off, or it gets, or it gets parts of their bodies like diced up like they're at a butcher shop. That is in the film. All that goriness is in the film, and it is fun. But there needs to be like a little bit more tension to it than just, waiting for that moment to happen. And the way that like characters get like tossed through buildings, and they use like the environment around them, like they use like the skeletons around them to beat on others, how they use bone, how they use like pits of acid, just all the different little details makes these fights a lot more compelling, while at the same time pretty funny, especially with Johnny Cage's many fights, where he keeps on stressing that his only superpower is just that he's a very handsome actor, which turns out to have its benefits, especially during the fight with Baraka, which has it has just like the perfect punchline that I will not reveal here because it's too good. So yeah, this film, I think some people might be dismayed. I think that it kind of like goes through a lot of characters really quickly here. In particular, you might remember the character of Cole, who was a big deal in the last film. He kind of gets kicked to the curb here. It kind of feels like he's like outstayed his welcome, and he's kind of being crowded out by the other characters. And there are, in fact, a lot of other characters from the Mortal Kombat games who just kind of like show up to serve a purpose, and you don't know too much about them before they either like step aside or they get killed in battle. And I think I would say that's a flaw if it weren't for the fact that this story is pretty goofy, that if you slowed down too much, you would start questioning too much of the mechanics, and it would get tedious. And it thankfully never did. And I think that works because of the abundance of characters in between all these pretty cool fights. Like they bring in like Quan Chi, who is just, you don't need to know much about Quan Chi from the games. Like, he shows up in this story because he's a necromancer. He brings people back from the dead. Okay, got it. Scorpion shows up, and they just establish him as the spirit, this soul who wants revenge for his family, and he gets another chance at that. There are some flashbacks here and there to, set the stage and let you know that, oh yeah, remember these characters from the last film. But even if you haven't seen it, you don't need to worry because it's not important. All you need to know is that Earthrealm needs to defeat Shao Kahn and his minions in order so that the Earth isn't enslaved. And that's pretty much all you need to know, and all the little details about fighting for the throne and characters trying to find their powers and who they're fighting for. It's all just kind of, it's not as important. Like, it serves a purpose. It does give motivation, and it does give tension, but you don't want to spend too much on it. Otherwise, like I said, you're going to question it. You're going to be spending the whole movie just debating the mechanics of how this, how does this kingdom work? How does the fight work? Who are the elder gods? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's like they bring them up, they're mentioned, they're not that important. You get back to the fight. And you establish like an arc for the characters that matter, that you care about, and have a few surprises along the way about who's not going to make it in this fight, which Earthrealm they lose quite a bit of fighters in this movie, way more than the last one. So the bulk of the ensemble performs well in the fight choreography and the absurd dialogue, but the crucial component of this picture is Johnny Cage, and not just because of the because Urban is perfect for the role. He's really fun in this. His brazen, blunt manner grounds the picture in relatability while preventing it from drowning in its own video game citations and its self-seriousness. Because the games were never serious, so why should this film treat all of its like, like its necromancers and warriors brought back from the dead, and the revival of Kano with such stern seriousness. Like, sometimes you need to just point out the ridiculousness in order to make Katana's vengeful quest more fulfilling. Instead of just like framing her as one more bloodthirsty player who's hiding behind a mask, which thankfully she doesn't. She actually takes off the mask at several points, which is good because I want to get to know a lot of these characters instead of just, all of them being behind different color coordinated masks like they're Power Rangers. I should also mention that I really did like Katana's performance by Adeline Rudolph. Like I said, she takes off the mask, but also like a lot of her fights are very physical and very creative. Like, I mean, sure, you know that she has those those fans with the knives, which do cut up people. But I love the scenes of her like scaling roofs and leaping through the air, and the way that she like bounds off of buildings and like drags a knife down into the wall. I love all of her moves, and I love how there are stakes to her character instead of just being, like one more player. I really did like her performance, but I also loved her her little fan with the blades, especially for like the big finale in which she uses them, which let's say this. If you're familiar with her finishing moves, there is one you're really going to love. That's the other thing that I love about this film, is how it weaves in all the different references from the games. More on a visual level than just like a stability level. Like, they're Easter eggs. Like, you don't have to have played the games to appreciate the linear style of a lot of the fighting environments, or familiar locations, or even just like at one point they pay tribute to like when you almost defeat a person, they're kind of like staggering around. They have like a great setup for that. But again, you don't have to watch, you don't have to play the games to know that. It's just a funny gag, and it works well, and it serves its purpose with the tension of whether or not this character will die in this fight. So everything about the sequel has more personality, including the fights, as a huge improvement. Like I said, the environments, they have a lot going for them. Even the scenes that replicate the linear framing of the games, there's more at stake in these fights, with dialogue that extends beyond the grunts and, the expectant finish him, which, yes, they do have that in the film. They have everything the fans want, but also enough to be an enjoyable, dumb, fun action film without having to play the games, or without having to like come in with a laundry list and say, oh, the film needs to do this, this, and this. If you want to play that game, that's fine, but it's not necessary. It's not a requirement to understand the film or enjoy it. You can enjoy it just fine. Like when I was watching all these brutal fight scenes, the crowd was just eating it up. They were laughing, they were clapping, they were hooting and hollering for scenes of decapitation and limbs being torn off and ripped apart and just all these betrayals. Like it was fun stuff. I mean, like, is the story dumb? Yes, it's very dumb. It's very ridiculous. And so is the dialogue. A lot of the dialogue that these characters spout is just so goddamn ridiculous. And I kind of wouldn't have it any other way. They never linger on it long enough where it becomes too serious or too pretentious in several moments. There's just the right amount. I thought for sure I would get tired of Johnny Cage's many jokes. I didn't. Kano shows up again, and he has a lot of cynical jokes as well. I thought I'd get tired of him as well. I don't. There's just enough of him in this movie where you can appreciate him, and you like him, and you like what all these different silly characters add into the mix without it feeling like a total mess. It feels like there's a good balance of enough here. Like, now, sure, would it be great if there was a lot more backstory to Johnny Cage, and we got to explore a little bit more of the grief within Liu Kang? Sure, but also there's so much else going on in this film, and you kind of have to ask yourself, like, what matters more? Do you want to see the full backstory of Liu Kang with Kung Lao and his deep feelings? Do you want to see the rocky road that led Johnny Cage down the path of an action hero who was betrayed by Hollywood? Or would you just like to, leave those blanks filled in your mind and just get right to the fun that you could have with these characters in this martial arts setting? Because like I said, the tournament, it starts like right away. Like, it doesn't even start in the reboot. It starts like within maybe like 10 to 15 minutes in this film. And they just like, they jump into it. There's no preamble. There's no like, opening announcement. There's no like, let's get ready to rumble. No, it's just like, bam, the tournament's here. We got to go. Let's do it now. We wasted a whole film. We got to get to it in the sequel. So Mortal Kombat 2 pulls off just the right moves for a faithful video game that is equal parts fun, faithful, and filled with fatalities. Like, it still has all the stuff from the Mortal Kombat games, but it never relies on you recognizing the final stage setting to appreciate the daring climax. Scenes of Johnny Cage versus Baraka are more entertaining for their staging than just being a series of punches before the inevitable finishing move. And there's like I said, I can't stress this enough. There's a fusion of the dumb enthusiasm from the 1995 film and the gory craft of the 2021 reboot. And it combines for just this ideal dose of dumb, gory, violent fun. In other words, it's the best kind of Mortal Kombat movie, Techno Syndrome theme song and all. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with Mortal Kombat 2.